drill and he's got the hand up, put the hand up there. Right. So the first thing with this is when we're playing this game is I always want to be gripping. I do need to grip high. Okay. And the second step for me before I grab this arm is to always put his hips in the air. Right. I want to put him, all his weight has to go into this arm. So the order is, to me, at the moment, I may change it later, but this is where I'm at. I grab his wrist hand tight, right? And I put my hips, my other elbow for now stays down. And I put his hips in the air. Once I put his hips in the air, I can begin to try and stop him pulling the arm out by putting my hand to the tricep, right? And I'm edging this so he can't walk his knee up. So that for me is the first bit. The next bit is I start to bring my ear to this shoulder. Okay, so that all needs to happen, right? So that's happening. So in order for me to roll him, the first triangle is from basically that I've got this hip connection here, and I've got my shoulder. So this is, remember the triangle of Matt and Liam, right? So here's my shoulder, and what I need to try to do is to take my body, the first triangle, is to take my, like this hip drives through that gap to the point where Gary's shoulder not only begins to touch the mat, but it starts to go towards his own thumb. That's what makes him fall and shoulder roll. So Matt talks about this a bit. He talks about the shoulder coming up as once this shoulder gets to here, he will begin to fall. But I do think there's an earlier one where if I can turn through this angle, I bring his shoulder here and it already begins to collapse long before. So that's the first triangle, all the way up, landing on the front of my thighs. I've posted a video up on why you land on the front of the thighs from yesterday, that I did get. So that's the first triangle. So I'm, without Gary a second, so I'm here, so I get the pressure off my neck, I put him up in the air, putting all his weight into that arm, the arm that's on the ground, right? And I'm looking through here and putting all that weight here, right? Obviously I want my feet, this is about as near as I can get my heels, right? Some of you will be able to get a lot nearer, be more flexible. But that's the first triangle. That's really the first triangle. I'm going up through this angle. Anything where I go off this angle, I go into his body. And what happens is his arm begins not to fold, right? And he can stagger his arm. So as he gets back on now, there's a second triangle going on. And where these triangles are intersecting is where everything's it's kind of like where they intersect and where they kind of, what's left, the space between the two triangles, is your line. And you'll see that in the picture. So what I'm really trying to do to Gary is I'm trying to put his hip into his shoulder at a line that makes his shoulder fold to his thumb, right? That's what I'm trying to do. Anything where I start going off, so it's almost like this part of his shoulder I'm trying to put to the ground, the outside of his shoulder. Anything where that shoulder begins to open out is a problem for me. So if I bridge him that way, his shoulder begins just to turn out. So he's not going to fall, he's not going to shoulder roll here, because this arm can hold him up. We're trying to bend that arm. Does that make sense? So as his arm, so he's obviously, I want to bridge this way. So I'm up, I get him up. But this shoulder, when I'm driving this, the reason this needs to move, one, I need to roll over my own shoulder. But secondly, I need to drive this hip to turn that shoulder towards his thumb. You see that? This is why I need to go straight up. And this is actually breaking now before he's getting near his own arm. So that's the second triangle. And I feel that so opening that out allows me to roll over my shoulder, but it allows me to fold. I'm taking his shoulder to his thumb. And that is what basically is making him shoulder roll with a minimum of effort. So if I was doing a shoulder roll, you know, we often get the kids doing things like, you know, going through here because they struggle, their heads are relatively big and they can't shoulder roll. So we're both doing 2 shoulder rolls effectively. I'm trying to roll myself up over this line. It's really, but I keep my feet down and I'm trying to do the same basically to him. Yeah? Any questions on that? So super slow, as slow as you can go, just doing that and feeling where it breaks down. And it will break down in one of 2 places. It either breaks down because you don't create this space here, or it breaks down because you go to your knees and you drop your hip connection. And those are the 2 failure points. And if you do it super slow, you'll find where you're failing. Yeah? And your angle always should be, you should find what he ends up doing is his shoulder folds towards his own thumb. Yeah? Let's give it a go. Yeah.
With regard to the hand that you grab, obviously it's important that you keep it. If you lose it and you still get the perfect angle, will he still go, or will he always be able to post on that arm that he's choking with?
No, you can always potentially post.
Always potentially post if you
But
lose it.
I don't really feel that losing it is the worst thing in the world because it means he's disconnected. My bigger concern is that my hips go up in the air. Let's say he's not choking me. Let's say he's hitting me. This is what I need to begin doing.
Yeah.
Because I have to now keep one of his hands on the ground. And if I angle into this, it's now like, okay, I know it's this hand.
Yeah.
Right? And now he's like, now we're good to, you know, I've got time now to do things.
Yeah.
Because I'm,
Okay.
yeah, I don't really, if he rips his arm out, I don't really want that during, because then the guy can be, but it's not the end of the world. I'd rather you keep you keep his hips up in a hand, and if he's fighting with one arm, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What tends to happen is people get obsessed with holding the arm and they drop their hips. More important, keep hips up. Yeah. Let's get body, let's give this a go. Super slow.